This year, some unknown man is about to turn 55, filled with endless trials, heavy thoughts, and an exhausting struggle for survival. He could not understand what he was continuing to do at such a venerable age, because most people of his generation had long since retired, while his own life had turned into a series of failures, deep disappointments, and unfulfilled hopes. It was at that alarming moment that some alien and sinister monster spoke to him, as if deliberately trying to break his will and finally subjugate him. The man couldn't understand why he was considered a pathetic loser, because he had gone through pain, loss, and betrayal. And these monsters didn't even give him a chance to catch his breath. They continued to attack him with redoubled fury without stopping, leaving him no chance to rest or recover his strength. Players of his generation were extolled as saints of the sword, unrivaled gods of fencing, or other admiring titles, while he remained, in the eyes of others, just an old man with a tarnished blade or a pathetic shareholder. Slowly losing his mind, he did not raise his sword, and this reason alone was enough to make him suffer and feel an incessant sense of guilt towards himself. From his earliest years, he spent his childhood in an orphanage, deprived of maternal affection, paternal care, and even simple human warmth. He clearly remembered how one day, a soft-voiced girl called his name and, trying to encourage him, asked him not to be afraid, assuring him that the teacher was fine, and that he just needed to keep writing. Even the teacher from the orphanage and the children, who became his real family forever, occupied a special place in his heart, leaving an unhealed mark there. However, all these people, close and dear to him, died under terrible circumstances, leaving him alone with his own loneliness and emptiness. When a devastating collapse opened up in the heavens, merciless monsters descended upon the earth, sparing no one and nothing. These soulless creatures took absolutely everything from him: his home, his friends, his family, his dreams, and everything that filled his heart with meaning. But even then, he did not allow himself to break, continuing to fight desperately as if every second could be his last. Even when the breath of death was already felt behind him, he did not allow his hand to tremble and did not let go of the sword. Even at this critical and seemingly hopeless moment, he managed to find the last remnants of willpower in himself, not to succumb to despair. Suddenly, someone completely unfamiliar appeared right in front of him, and his very appearance changed everything that was happening around him. Suddenly, a girl asked with a worried look about his well-being after such a brutal and exhausting battle. It was then that something completely inexplicable happened, a real miracle which radically changed his fate. He was saved by that very figure, whose image was forever imprinted in his memory and did not fade even with the passage of time. It was at that moment that he first truly wanted to become as strong as those who came to his aid. In his darkest hour, he put absolutely everything he had left into this sincere desire, leaving nothing for himself. No doubts, no regrets. Why, despite the countless number of defeated monsters, all his efforts were in vain and did not produce any tangible results. He never became a real hero, failing to come close to the lofty goal he had dreamed of throughout his life. Ultimately, he was unable to protect anything that he truly considered important and truly dear. He screamed, trying his best, but no matter how much he called, no one heard him or came to help. Inner impotence, intertwined with the awareness of hopeless defeat, ate away at him from within like poison. His body was treacherously failing, ceasing to obey at the most inopportune and mortally dangerous moment. It was then that something so strange and unexpected happened, that it was capable of completely changing the course of events. He saw a terrifying monster emerge from the dark void, right in front of him, as if it had escaped from a nightmare. He had absolutely nothing left. No family, no roof over his head. Not even a dream, and his whole life resembled a mosaic picture shattered into pieces. It was for this reason that he could not stop regretting every loss, every mischance, and every choice he made. He dreamed of the opportunity to go back in time, even for a moment, and change everything so that he would never repeat his mistakes again. And finally, he was officially congratulated on clearing the dungeon, which had the frightening name of the ancient dragon's nest. Shin Sang-yoon still remained in place, as if petrified, not understanding what actions to take. After such a long-awaited victory, he could not understand why he took risks again and again, because at his age, every mistake could be his last. His name was Shin Sang-yoon, and for 30 years, he had remained just an ordinary swordsman, only once making it into the top 100 best fighters in the country. However, even this seemingly significant achievement lost all meaning, because in this world, there were too many incredibly strong players who surpassed him by tens of times. He was puzzled as to why his power's development had suddenly stalled, even though he continued to absorb rare artifacts and persistently studied books that revealed combat skills. It was then that the very representative of the late dawn appeared, the impeccable student, as if he had been specially waiting for the right moment to appear. At that very second, Shin Sang-hun noticed someone emerging from the glowing portal, heading straight towards him, with purpose. The late bloomer student blessed him with dignity for his work and presented him with a reward, a final blow of impeccable skill. The person who appeared before him again was one of the members of the contracted group, called Late Dawn, and despite Shin Sang-hun being considered only a third-rate swordsman, they still came into contact with him. Late Dawn explained that upon reaching level 850, all player parameters, including stats and artifact power double, and upon reaching level 900, they triple, but Sanshin's current level barely reached 650. One of the most absurd conditions of their contract was that, during the entire period of their cooperation, he never received the slightest tangible benefit from this union. He was given the order to absorb the skill book, although Shin Sang-hun was already planning to do so on his own initiative. At that very moment, he was preparing to absorb the book, seeking to gain new, previously inaccessible powers and forgotten knowledge. Absorbing artifacts remained the only method he was able to discover after his awakening, to gradually understand the essence of his own ability. He even tried to heat-treat the artifacts before consuming them, but he realized with bitterness that such actions made no sense. 30 long and difficult years have passed since he finally stopped his fruitless and hopeless experiments with artifacts when he used the synchronization of his mana with an artifact of a suitable rank. He suddenly realized that he had activated a new, not yet fully learned artifact absorption skill. One thing he realized too late. The other players became strong almost immediately after waking up, while he was just beginning to realize his potential. Shin Sang-hyun carefully placed his palm on the time-worn book, feeling excitement mixed with a slight fear before activating. He couldn't understand why there wasn't at least a simple instruction, because logically, there should have been a regular skill book in front of him. Late Dawn, in the person of an educated and sensible student, admitted that practically nothing was known about this skill and apologized for his own impotence. However, he added that time was not yet up and suggested a compromise by starting the synchronization procedure right now. Shin Sang-hun asked sharply and annoyedly, who said that he had much time left, since he had already crossed the threshold of 60 years. He bitterly noted that if he had had a son at the age of 30, that same son would now be 30. And if he had fathered a child earlier, he could have had grandchildren. But these star beings are not able to understand this, because they do not know what mortality is. He apologized if he said anything unnecessary or offensive, but Shin Sang-hun assured him that he did not do anything wrong. It's just how his life turned out. A series of losses, failures, and regrets, where now only the pain of lost opportunities remains. He couldn't get the image of the receding back of the one he wanted to be at least a little like. Out of his mind, but at the moment he felt completely exhausted, too old, worn out, and tired to continue the fight. If only he had the chance to be even a little younger, perhaps things would have gone in a completely different direction. At that moment, judging by the expression on his face, his companion suddenly had some kind of thought, like a sudden flash of insight. Shin Sang-hun announced, with a slight grin, that he was officially retired, and suggested that this decision be included in the contract as final. It was then that he began to feel that something invisible around him was gradually changing, as if reality was slowly being rebuilt. A scene so strange and unnatural unfolded before his eyes that it seemed as if he were watching what was happening from the outside, without participating in it. The last thing he remembered was how, at the age of 55, his essence was disposed of as part of the Late Dawn experiment, and after that time itself began to run in reverse. A rank 6 player named Park Youngman, who was working as a reporter at the time, reported on air that the dungeons and gates had caused a wave of awakenings among the people, and asked if others had joined in. Han Henson, the head of the huge Henson Corporation, confirmed this information, and compared the dungeons to the stages of development that players go through. As for the gates, he explained that they represent completely different dimensions that have no intersection with the territories known to mankind. These unexplored regions, he said, would be places of great discovery, heroism, and self-sacrifice for future pioneers. And the reporter asked about the experts' opinions on the current year's dungeons. Shin Sang-hyun realized with shock that he had actually returned to the past, because he clearly remembered that episode of the TV show. He understood what was happening, recognizing every word and event. But despite this, he had been in a state of confusion and internal paralysis. 4 days later, he lost consciousness, and when he opened his eyes, he found himself in an old, dusty studio apartment where he had not been for 30 years. He found himself not in the body of an elderly man, but once again became a 25-year-old young man, while retaining absolutely all the memories of his past life, no matter how it happened. He knew for sure that he had returned to his own past, and this could only be explained by the will of the mysterious constellations. Shin Sang-hun still had some unfinished business and obligations, but that didn't matter now, because he had a chance to change everything. He remembered the bronze rank general, a rare character he had once managed to obtain despite his low status. However, he knew of its unique feature, a hidden ability of accelerated absorption, which allowed it to absorb artifacts 10% faster. And when retrospectively activating the artifact, the efficiency increased to 20%, despite the general slowness and low absorption rate caused by long periods of inactivity. The most valuable thing about this artifact was its hidden effect. The procedure of synchronizing mana with the Venomoth dagger began, and his mind immediately plunged into a state of complete shutdown, falling into the unconscious space. This space called the gap of unconsciousness. He had to pass through every time he absorbed the artifact, and each time he was overcome with fear of what would happen at the exit. Shin Sang-hun was very surprised when he saw that this time everything was unusually calm, without chaos and pain. The preparatory stage for the absorption of the dagger has come to an end, and the entire process has been successfully completed. A dish suddenly appeared in front of him, an appetizing grilled chicken, generously drizzled with aromatic olive oil. He noted with relief that this time he was in for a normal, pleasant meal, and not the disgusting swamp centipede that had happened before. He could eat such food at any moment without the slightest disgust, which even caused a slight feeling of joy. As a result of the absorption, he received a bonus, a permanent increase in his agility by 2 points, which became his first tangible success. In addition, he acquired a hidden combat ability called Demon Strike, which greatly enhanced his offensive capabilities. After the absorption was complete, the dagger immediately disappeared from the inventory, leaving behind only the acquired skills and new power. The hero felt a little sad about the loss of the artifact, but he understood that he still would not have used it directly. And now, it was time to prepare for the next step. At that moment, dungeon number 0.85 was being explored by a team, led by the experienced and determined captain, Yin Deacon. It was at this moment that someone shouted to him from the depths of the detachment, asking why the commander of the Porter group had been called here. They were told that they had a new recruit who had just joined 4 days ago, and that his name was Shin Sang-yun, and that he would soon officially join the team of players. One of the men expressed confidence that this newcomer was truly ready to join a combat team, and not a Porter team at all. He had already approved the corresponding order, but asked a clarifying question, whether there were any problems with this, since too little time had passed since awakening. He also recalled that he had not even completed his training at the academy, and that the captain had never previously accepted unstable players into the team, fearing that this could lead to the destruction of the overall balance. He turned to Shin Sang-hun at the very moment when the entire team was frozen, in anticipation of his final decision. The captain asked if he was following the cargo distribution system and the structure of the deposits, and almost immediately after that, he demanded that he received the necessary treatment. The only thing he asked was to give the porters a voice. Otherwise, they could upset the already fragile balance, making the entire group even more unstable. The guy asked the captain in bewilderment why he had decided to accept him at all, since he himself admitted that it was a completely illogical decision. The man calmly replied that if anyone died in this raid, it would most likely be him, and then the rest of the porters would finally calm down, and the total number of victims among them would decrease. Well, what can a player of only level 1 do anyway? He handled it so cleverly that the guy didn't even immediately grasp the essence of what was said. Shin Sang-hun stepped forward, greeted those present, and solemnly announced that he would officially join the ranks of the players from today, giving his full name. Those around him immediately stared at him with obvious surprise, not hiding their genuine interest and slight confusion in their eyes. The captain watched what was happening with a slight half-smile, carefully assessing the newcomer's behavior and trying to understand his character. The guy noticed that their gazes were literally focused on him, which he of course expected, but did not think that it would be so open and persistent. Captain Khanate noted, with a touch of irony, that the newcomer had finally arrived, expressed his joy at meeting him, and admitted that he had already begun to think that he would be late. At that moment, the man noticed his weapon, which seemed very unusual and even strange to him. He asked if it was a long sword, and upon hearing confirmation, he was surprised to learn that the boy had learned to use it exclusively from YouTube tutorials. The man sighed and explained that the long sword was considered one of the most difficult to use in combat, but perhaps a beginner would only need minimal skills to defend himself. He patted him on the shoulder and, with a slight mockery, said that the guy had a hot spirit, and that was already important. A real man should be brave. The moment for the raid to begin approached, and the man, as if wanting to diffuse the situation, suggested having a little fun before the upcoming battle. He ordered the newcomer, as soon as he entered inside, to remain in reserve, and under no circumstances to approach the exit until ordered. The question was in the air. How many enemies would they be able to destroy today? And although no one knew the exact answer, everyone was sure that it would definitely be more than this newcomer. At this moment, the captain watched the main character with special attention, trying to read his mood and inner readiness in his behavior. He could guess what video training meant, because the guy gave the impression of being a complete amateur who didn't have the slightest idea about dungeons. It was obvious that he had only recently awakened, but he was already behaving like an old man, fulfilling his last wish in life, according to the strategic plan of the raid, developed by the captain himself. The path leading through the orc's lair was considered a real test, and a final trial for all newcomers. He was absolutely sure that this guy would very soon realize how stupid and naive he was, but after just a little while, the captain will be amazed to the depths of his soul by what this strange newcomer is capable of. He even began to suspect that what was happening was simply impossible, and wondered who was really standing in front of him. None of the team members could explain what exactly they had just seen with their own eyes. Shin Sang-yun continued to stand there with an impassive face, as if everything happening around him had nothing to do with him. Orcs are a type of monster that can most often be found in computer games, novels, and various works of the fantasy genre. Since all these sources depicted orcs in almost the same way, everyone was confident that they would not be difficult to deal with. Among players, there has long been an established opinion that orcs are the simplest and rather weak opponents, not posing a particular threat. Of course, compared to more dangerous creatures like dragons, orcs seemed stupid, cruel, and primitive. For this reason, newcomers, overestimating their strength, often recklessly rushed into battle with the orcs, without thinking about the consequences. And although the orcs' characteristics were quite simple, underestimating them was a fatal mistake, for which one had to pay with lives. It was at this moment that one of the monsters suddenly grabbed the guy with such force that he could barely stay on his feet, try to maintain his balance. The average height of these creatures was about 250 centimeters, and their weight could reach 180 kilograms, making them truly dangerous. Therefore, sending a newcomer into battle with the orcs meant essentially signing his death warrant. It was then that they still continued to advance forward, without slowing down and without paying attention to the danger. At some point, one of the fighters told the main character not to expect special treatment, because from now on, he is on his own. He had only recently awakened and was formally considered a player, although in fact he remained a complete ignoramus and simpleton. Shin Sang-hyun, with a slight, almost friendly smile on his face, assured that he would make every effort and try his best. The main thing is that he fights honestly, and the result will be shown by the battle itself. Without any words, Shin Sang-yun didn't answer, but only looked at him attentively and silently in that tense moment. He suddenly asked if he could fight on the front lines, and after these words, everyone in the detachment literally went speechless from surprise. At that moment, the man looked closely at him, trying to determine whether he had gone crazy from an excess of enthusiasm. It was then that he noticed a huge orc sneaking up behind the protagonist, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Shin Sang-hyun's first fight after returning to the past was unexpectedly lively, exciting, and even somewhat funny. At that moment, the man raised his weapon, preparing to repel the attack of the monster that suddenly pounced on them. He asked with annoyance if he had gone mad to dare to use such a slow sword in a fight with an orc. Shin Sang-hun calmly replied that he did not need saving, and advised the captain to talk less and get down to business. The man didn't know whether to thank him for saving it, or whether it was just a spontaneous impulse caused by the moment. It was then that someone's sword flashed before his eyes, flickering through the air with astonishing speed. It was the captain himself, who appeared nearby at the last moment, and dealt the ORC a precise and powerful blow, saving his comrade. he threw the monster far away from him with incredible force, causing it to writhe and squirm away from the main fight. With a slight grin, he asked if she and the guy were going on a date, and then sternly ordered them to stop messing around and get down to business. All the fighters instantly began to loudly admire their captain, noting his outstanding strength and fearless bravery. At that very moment, the monster again rushed furiously at the captain, not giving him a second to rest or catch his breath. The man chuckled quietly and said that for him, this fight was a trifle not worthy of any special attention. It was at that very moment that he confidently thrust his sword straight into the monster's heart, piercing it right through with impeccable precision. All the players immediately began to whisper among themselves, amazed at how masterfully he had struck the monster in its most vulnerable spot, in the heart. Just then, the monster suddenly broke into a hideous, wild grin as if mocking what was happening. The next second, the monster began to rapidly and furiously attack the captain, not giving him the slightest time to recover and react. It was at this very moment that the captain barely managed to dodge the sudden, swift attack of the enraged monster. Showing instant agility, Shin Sang-hun calmly and silently watched the entire course of the fierce battle, preferring not to interfere or get distracted. Yennekin, despite having a fairly high level, which was only 50, was unable to inflict any serious damage on the monster. The man hissed, angrily calling the creature a dirty bastard, and firmly promised that it would certainly get what it deserved for its insolence. At that very moment, the captain delivered a crushing blow, attacking the ORC from a completely unexpected and unpredictable side. All the participants in the battle were surprised to see that. He seemed to have killed the monster completely, finishing it off with his own hands with decisive force. The captain asked with a broad smile if everyone was alive, and calmly added that for him, this fight was just a trifle. All the fighters unanimously confirmed that they were completely fine, sincerely thanking the captain for his timely assistance and support. It was at that moment that the captain was about to give the order to continue on his way, when suddenly strange and alarming sounds were heard nearby. It turned out that new monsters had silently crept up on the squad from the opposite side, threatening a sudden attack. The fighters quickly realized that they were facing armed orcs and hastened to clarify with the captain what order should be given in the current situation. He immediately ordered a retreat for the safety of the entire detachment, explaining that he had only barely dealt with the previous enemy, and these looked much more dangerous. Suddenly, Shin Sang-hyun asked if he could try to deal with the new enemies on his own. Without any support, none of those present could believe their ears when they heard his bold proposal, and someone even involuntarily apologized to the captain for such insolence. The man reminded that he understood how happy the boy was about his awakening, but such a decision was too risky and dangerous for a newbie. However, Shin Sang-hyun did not listen to the warnings, and despite all the persuasion, immediately rushed into battle, showing determination and fearlessness. He noted that the long sword turned out to be a very good weapon, with a decent cut and convenience in combat. Everyone was amazed before they could even comprehend how he, with one swift movement, cut the monster in two, demonstrating his skill and strength. Shin Sang-hun noted with a slight grin that even at level 1, he could have made the cut even cleaner and neater. Meanwhile, the remaining monster watched him carefully, not making any more attacks and preparing for its next move. All the orcs rushed towards the main character at the same time, and he confidently declared that his level, although not high, was high. However, he has enough experience to deal with such opponents and emerge victorious from the battle. Shin Sang-hyun fearlessly rushed into battle against all enemies at once, without retreating a single step, and demonstrating incredible endurance. The enraged monsters responded by attacking him furiously, trying to overwhelm him with numbers and strength. But he was not going to give up. With a grin, he asked them if they even understood who was standing in front of them and who they dared to contact. He recalled that he had already killed dozens of people like them, and that for him, such battles were commonplace and an easy task. None of the fighters could believe that it was really Shin Sang-hyun, because he destroyed enemies with such ease and confidence. Shin Sang-hun informed one of his fighters that there was one last enemy left, whom he could deal with personally and without outside help. The final opponent turned out to be a particularly ferocious and armed ORC, with a massive and terrifying axe that evoked fear and respect. The monster rushed to attack the guy without hesitation, not intending to retreat and demonstrating fury and determination. Shin Sang-hyun instantly moved from his place, deftly dodged the blow, and quickly rushed towards the enemy, showing excellent reaction at that very moment. With one powerful and precise movement, he cut off the orc's head, leaving his body lifeless and without signs of life. The captain shouted loudly that this monster had too thick and resilient skin, and normal attacks usually did not bring the desired result. Shin Sang-hyun immediately realized that a simple strike would not work this time, and that he would need to use more powerful skill and strength. However, he immediately ordered the others not to interfere, and to leave the entire fight on his shoulders, giving him the opportunity to concentrate. He began to gather mana, concentrating deeply, and activated the Demon Strike skill level 1, using all his power and scope. At that very moment, the ORC suddenly froze right in front of Shin Sang-hyun, completely losing control and initiative in the fight. The protagonist firmly ordered him to stand still, not to try to move twitch or make any attempts to attack. It was then that the monster became enraged and tried to break free. But it was too late to change the course of events and avoid defeat. The next moment, Shin Sang-hyun mercilessly deprived him of his head, without giving him the slightest chance to strike back or resist. None of the fighters could immediately comprehend or believe what they had just seen, with their own eyes deep in the dungeon. No one could understand how this was possible, since Shin Sang-hyun had awakened just 3 days ago, and the interference skill he used was too precise and complex. These were not ordinary ultra-short interference at all, since the delay in their activation was as much as 1/2 seconds, which required special skill. Wasn't he too dexterous and skilled with a long sword? Which made one want to ask what video he watched to learn how to do that. The captain was genuinely amazed and incredibly surprised by how easily and simply Shin Sang-hyun dealt with the arm door, demonstrating a high level of skill. But only a few days had passed since his awakening, so it was unclear where he could have gotten such skill and experience from. At that very moment, the protagonist received a notification that he had leveled up and received the title of F rank, a fearless immature puppy. However, he himself was completely indifferent to the new level, although the name of the title he received seemed very funny and ironic to him. He was also informed that he had unallocated bonus points and was offered to choose characteristics to further improve his abilities. He remembered how in his past life he had realized too late that the luck stat affected the frequency of rare and valuable artifacts. At that moment, the captain persistently began to ask the guy if he really was the same Shin Sang-hyun that legends were told about. He was especially interested in whether the interference was actually used, where he got such a skill from, and where he could have gotten it. Of course, Shin Sang-hyun couldn't say that. He lived to be 50 and then returned at 25, retaining all the experience he had accumulated. The captain continued to ask whether the newcomer had decided to deceive them all with his sudden talent and luck. He insisted that the guy not avoid answering because he simply could not have been so lucky without having a good and powerful artifact. Perhaps he has a hidden artifact in his hands of a diamond level, or even something higher and rarer, which would give such capabilities. The main character answered with a grin, asking if the captain would like to check everything personally and see with his own eyes his strength and skills. The captain decided to agree to this proposal, since checking it himself was the only way to finally find out the truth. He couldn't understand whether it was a simple sword, or whether all success depended solely on the skills and abilities of the guy himself. He had been exploring dungeons for 2 years, but even he didn't have such reaction, speed and skill level in handling weapons. At that very moment, the captain received alarming news that the middle boss of the dungeon had awakened in the central room. The captain ordered everyone to immediately gather and head straight towards him, so as not to miss the most opportune moment for battle. Dealing with the minions was fairly easy, especially thanks to Shin Sang-hyun's efforts and skill. But there was no time to relax. The interference he had been using would prove to be completely useless, as he would soon be facing a battle with a demonic orc, a much more powerful opponent. He almost forgot the main reason why he decided to join this particular unit. After returning for the opportunity to test himself in battle at that very moment, Shin Sang-hyun turned to the captain, who in turn asked him if he was afraid of the upcoming battle. The protagonist asked if he could take the artifact for himself if he killed the boss himself, counting on the team's fairness. After all, in this team, it is customary to pay each person according to his personal merits, regardless of the title or rank of the fighter. The Crimson Stone is a unique artifact that can only be obtained by killing the demonic orc in the depths of the dungeon. Even after defeating 100 of such monsters, the chance of dropping this valuable stone remains extremely low and almost negligible in a past life. Their team failed to defeat the boss, and the artifact went to a completely different, more successful group at this moment. One of the fighters conveyed congratulations to the captain on successfully completing a stage of the dungeon. They asked how the captain managed to get hold of such a rare artifact, and joked with a smile that they could sell it for a huge price. Isn't this the only artifact with a delay effect in this location? And why does it continue to loudly declare itself, annoying those around it? The protagonist became interested in the fact that this was specifically about the delay skill, since he was in dire need of such a skill for further battles. Shin Sang-yeon continued to stand and patiently wait for the captain to answer his question, demonstrating his seriousness of intentions. He recalled that if his memory serves him right, they pay here in proportion to each person's contribution to the overall success and victory. The captain listened to his words in silence, without giving any direct answer or revealing his true intentions. If you can get the delay skill, it will be extremely useful. Although many on the team will condemn the audacity of a newbie trying to stand out, no one on the team took Shin Sang-hyun seriously, considering him just another overconfident upstart who wasn't particularly trustworthy. They began to speak out indignantly, wondering who he thought he was, if after killing a couple of orcs, he was already demanding the artifact for himself. The captain ordered everyone to calm down and gave Shin Sang-yeon permission to act at his own discretion and decision. However, this was only possible if the other fighters failed to defeat the boss during the upcoming fight. Only then could he go inside the boss room and try to kill the monster alone. The protagonist realized that the situation was much more difficult than he expected because it meant serious trials and risks. The captain told him to find something to do and not get distracted, while the rest of the fighters dealt with the boss. He considered the guy an impudent upstart with only one normal skill, but an overly inflated ego. He promised to personally ensure that the dungeon was cleared and that the newcomer would be left empty-handed if he did not perform properly. He firmly decided that on the battlefield, the decisive factors were not luck, but experience and the ability to make the right decisions in time. At that very moment, the captain grabbed the lever tightly and began to slowly open the massive gates leading to the boss's room. Following this, he was the first to enter the huge hall, where the mighty and ferocious middle boss of the dungeon was already waiting for them. The mid-boss of this deep and dark dungeon turned out to be a ferocious orc demon, huge, powerful, and truly terrifying to look at, with a thirst for blood and destruction. The captain firmly and decisively ordered all the fighters to immediately prepare for the most dangerous battle, realizing that the battle would be truly risky and intense. He had heard many legends and rumors that this boss could be defeated if one skillfully circled around and delivered targeted and well-aimed attacks at the right moment of the battle. Since the boss in question was not a team player and did not demonstrate cohesion, the captain regretfully noted that there was no room for egoism and personal ambitions in their team. He officially announced that he would take responsibility for the fight with this dangerous boss and categorically ordered the rest of the fighters to keep a safe distance, avoiding direct clashes. A few moments later, the captain was deeply and sincerely surprised by what had happened, as the situation was developing completely differently than he had expected and planned. He simply could not understand how such an unexpected and dangerous situation could arise, so quickly catching everyone off guard and disrupting plans. In fact, the main character felt fear when everyone suddenly started to flee in panic because no one was prepared for such a turn of events. When it became finally clear that everything was heading towards failure and possible defeat, the soldiers asked the captain what specific actions they should take to save themselves. They firmly and decisively answered that they would not give up and die so easily, since surrendering to such an orc meant admitting that they were weaklings and cowards. The fighters expressed the opinion that this ORC, like the previous one, turned out to be excessively strong and dangerous, which proved why one cannot unconditionally trust rumors and empty talk. The captain declared that it was pointless to continue risking the lives of the soldiers, so he gave the order to retreat immediately and postpone the battle to a more favorable and suitable time. Meanwhile, Shin Sang-hyun was already standing with a light and calm smile, carefully observing the events taking place and assessing the situation without the slightest haste. The other fighters were completely puzzled, not understanding what was happening to him and where this strange and unexpected confidence and self-assurance in his eyes came from. The captain, not hiding his irritation, said that he didn't care and that they would retreat from the flank due to poor visibility and unfavorable conditions on the battlefield. He asked what to do with this guy, who clearly wasn't going to retreat along with everyone else, showing strength of character and tenacity. The captain had warned him in advance not to be offended if he died first in this dangerous raid, because no one wanted to see recruits die. Shin Sang-hun responded with complete confidence that the captain should not worry about him, and that everything would definitely end well, because he was ready to fight to the end. The boy gripped the hilt of his long, sharp sword tighter, and firmly declared that he was not going to die today, intending to show his skill and fortitude. At that very moment, the monster roared, rearing up and furiously rushed into the attack, aiming straight at the guy and demonstrating incredible aggression and determination. Judging by the bare and dry statistical indicators, he did not have the slightest chance of winning the upcoming and seemingly hopeless fight. However, he had tremendous experience from his past life, which could completely equalize all their differences and provide a serious advantage in battle. The monster glared at him with hatred, tensing its massive muscles and clutching its heavy and terrifying weapon tightly in its hands. The guy heard one of his allies shouting about his axe, but it seemed he hadn't, yet managed to knock the weapon out of the monster's hands, which gave him hope for success. The protagonist said with a slight, mocking grin that perhaps all he was capable of was dodging blows and avoiding direct confrontations. It was at this moment that the rare and valuable stone that had attracted the hero's attention and promised strength and power began to shine brightly on the monster's chest. The hero immediately understood that it was this rare artifact. That was the main and most important reason why he came here, and risked his life for it. This stone provided a special effect that allowed the powerful Demon Strike skill to be combined with the necessary stun delay, opening up wide opportunities for control. He reasoned that if he could combine the effects of the two skills, he could achieve almost infinite control over the enemy, and confident victory if he can obtain this delay skill. The effect will become more than real, tangible and fully usable in combat. At that very moment, the monster roared again, preparing to deliver a crushing and fatal blow forward, aiming straight at the hero, giving him no respite a few seconds later. He rushed forward, swinging his axe like a giant heavy hammer, threatening to destroy everything around him. The main character, with a slight smile, called him an obedient monster, as if he fulfilled all his expectations and steps. According to the script, he said that he would be able to identify all of the monster's weak points in this way and ruthlessly use them against it, directing the battle to his advantage. The hero skillfully held back the monster's furious and powerful attacks, carefully choosing the right moment for a precise and deadly counterattack. He activated the Demon Strike skill, which should have stunned the monster for a full 2 seconds, giving it valuable time to maneuver. The captain noticed the skill being triggered and was surprised to find that it actually worked on such a powerful boss. The protagonist knew that most monsters were stupid and not very smart, but the orc demon represented a completely different, much more serious and dangerous level of threat. At that moment, a blinding and powerful flash of light flashed brightly in front of his face, leaving a long glowing trace in his eyes and temporarily blinding him. Just then the monster brought down his heavy axe with all his might, aiming straight at the boy and intending to deliver a fatal blow. The protagonist managed to react instantly and successfully defend himself from this monstrous and destructive attack, maintaining his balance and combat capability. However, he completely forgot about the monster's unique ability to quickly regenerate wounds, which significantly complicated the fight and changed the course of the battle. This ability removed the stun effect early, which put the hero in an extremely unpleasant and dangerous position. On the battlefield now, he had to wait a full 15 long seconds before he could reapply the stun and try to immobilize the enemy. If he can't stun the monster again, he'll have to fight at full strength, without relying on clever tricks and control over the situation. At first glance, the situation seemed relatively simple and clear, but in reality, everything turned out to be much more dangerous and much more complicated, requiring concentration. The guy shouted loudly to the captain that they couldn't retreat, otherwise they would all die one by one, unable to withstand the powerful onslaught of the enemy. He insisted that even if this orc seemed impenetrable and invulnerable, the captain must understand that the chances of victory always exist and cannot be lost. He reminded them that their skills were now almost useless against such an opponent, and the difference in characteristics was too great and required a cautious approach. He then asked with a slight mockery why Shin Sang-hun was standing there with a smug grin on his face, as if the fight had long since ended and the outcome had been decided. The main character had already faced such a battle once in his past life, remembering all the subtleties and peculiarities of such battles. He understood that if the enemy was much stronger, it was pointless to simply swing a weapon and try to cut through his armor. Instead, it makes much more sense to use your opponent's strength against him, turning his onslaught to your advantage and controlling the situation. It was in this way that he managed to break through the monster's defense, delivering a deadly and precise blow that decided the outcome of the battle. The protagonist ended this difficult and grueling battle with victory, having finally finished off and destroyed the middle boss of the dungeon. Everyone present immediately congratulated him on this well-deserved victory, and the game system reported his level increase. He received a new honorary title of E-Rank Demon Hunter, symbolizing his skill and strength. Now, he already had 2 titles, which perhaps partially compensated for his not entirely team-oriented and independent character. The protagonist looked closely at the captain and the other fighters, assessing their reaction and condition after the battle. Of course, everyone was so shocked and appalled by what had happened that they were completely speechless. To smooth over the awkward silence and situation that had arisen, there was only one way that could diffuse the situation. The hero grinned and said with slight irony that he would have almost died in battle if the captain had not inflicted all the decisive damage. One of the fighters supported the joke and asked when the captain had even managed to take part in strike. At first, the captain did not understand what was being discussed, but quickly realized what exactly was going on and why the situation had arisen. He looked at Shin Sang-hyun, taking in the current situation and assessing it from different angles. The guy thereby gave the captain a chance to save face and not put himself in an awkward light in front of the other fighters. At that very moment, the captain noticed the artifact lying on the ground in front of them and could not ignore it. He admitted his defeat and lowered his voice, ordering everyone to be on guard, as the final and most dangerous boss awaited them ahead. The captain understood that even despite this success, the guy alone would not be able to cope with the upcoming threat. He mentally envied the hero's skill in using the stunning skill, because on medium bosses, such an effect worked extremely rarely. And now, when no one from the team was around, the hero could calmly take the rare artifact for himself. He opened up the short period of unconsciousness necessary to safely absorb the stone and gain its power this time. The neural system gave him a Korean dish bibimbap, which caused the hero to smile slightly. The hero grinned, noting that he was lucky with the dishes again, because it was much nicer than receiving a swamp centipede as a gift. He carefully prepared for the absorption of the crimson artifact, anticipating receiving a new powerful bonus. According to the absorption coefficient, his strength and health stats increased by +2, greatly increasing his combat effectiveness. But most importantly, he received a special effect called Delay, which opens up new possibilities in battle. He could now add a delay effect to his skills immediately, deciding to apply it to his main skill. Demon Strike. The effect was successfully linked to the skill. After the first stun, the next hit could guarantee a second stun of the enemy. The third application gave a 90% chance of the effect continue. The fourth, 60%. The fifth, only 30%, gradually decreasing the probability. This created a real opportunity to arrange along for second continuous stun on the enemy, which was extremely valuable in combat. Theoretically, the chances were slim, but in practice, it was more than achievable if used correctly. At that very moment, the captain approached him and offered to talk calmly, to discuss further plans just before entering the final room. The captain asked if he wanted to officially join their team and work together, but unexpectedly, the hero declared that on the contrary, he did not want to be taken under the formal leadership of the captain. Instead, he proposed building relationships on an equal footing, without formal leadership and unnecessary rules. Shin Sang-hyun shook the captain's hand and agreed to these terms of cooperation. With a smile, the guy announced to the whole team that they were fully prepared for the final and decisive battle, which would soon begin. He strictly ordered everyone to be on guard, not to relax, and to carefully watch every move of the enemy. The protagonist noticed the captain's strange, piercing gaze directed in his direction, but did not attach much importance to it. The captain said that after the victory, it was definitely worth celebrating the event by drinking a glass to success. The doors to the final room in Dungeon 85 slowly swung open, revealing the final test inside. A huge and dangerous monster was already watching them closely, ready for the final battle. The final boss turned out to be an orc berserker, even more huge and ferocious than the previous boss. Causing fear, not all of the team immediately entered the room, assessing the situation and preparing for battle. The captain told Shin Sang-hun that he would go first and take the first onslaught of this fierce enemy. Shin Sang-hun took out his weapon and warned the other fighters to stay close to him for support and protection. According to him, this boss has much lower resistance to stun than the previous one, so the chances of success were quite real. He believed that there should be no problems if you attack wisely. Avoid unnecessary risks and do not take direct hits. But it was at that very moment that the monster suddenly charged, and Shin Sang-yun realized that perhaps he had overestimated his own confidence. In his younger years, he was afraid of almost everything around him. With age, he began to try to simply survive. But now he has firmly decided to change and become stronger. In order not to repeat the mistakes of the past, he knew he had to change and build a better, brighter future for himself. Shin Sang-hun decided to prove to everyone present here on this battlefield what he was truly capable of in this important and decisive fight. The captain couldn't understand who this new monster was that had appeared on his team, and this caused him a feeling of anxiety and fear. Shin Sang-hun gave a firm and clear order to attack, confident that he would be able to stun the monster. For all 4 long seconds, the monster felt a sharp pain, which amazed everyone around him, who immediately began to congratulate the hero on his victory over the final boss of the dungeon. The boys were surprised that he went through all of this so easily, without even resorting to the help of a single healing potion. During the fight, he calmly noted that he had no intention of making any special efforts. On their behalf, it was their personal business and responsibility. Having received the D-ranked title of unrivaled in strength, he was surprised by the abundance of new titles that he had never had before. However, even this was not enough, because in front stood Gyeonsu, a legendary Korean player who reached level 500 in just 2 years. This Jaeyoung-soo used to be his idol. But now Shin Sang-hun was confident that he could catch up with him and even surpass him in the future. The captain asked what he was doing now, to which the hero replied that he was simply warming up before the upcoming and very important battle. For a job well done, the captain rewarded him, emphasizing that he had indeed pulled out the entire raid single-handedly. Shin Sang-hun asked with a slight smile if the reward was too generous, to which the captain admitted with a smile that it was a parting gift. He realized that he would no longer see this hero as part of the team, because he had now reached a completely different level in status. The envious boy noticed that the captain was singling out Shin Sang-hun too much, which made him irritated and deeply angry. In a fit of emotion, he wished that both of them would die together, unable to bear the feeling of injustice and envy towards the newcomer. Returning home to Songpa, Shin Sang-hun felt joy, realizing that this was why he chose the path of a player and not a porter. He earned twice as much as usual, and on top of that, he received a decent bonus for a job well done in a raid. In addition to the money, he received a bronze-level berserker ring, which still proved to be quite useful in battle. He realized that most players don't have time to use such artifacts effectively, as their mana quickly runs out before they can even land a single hit. He himself understood the capabilities of such artifacts only after 50 levels, so now he used them much more efficiently and wisely. His experience showed that artifacts with energy consumption do not receive penalties, even in cases where the mana is already completely depleted. He started the synchronization process with the Berserker Ring, deciding that the more skills and bonuses were involved, the better for him. In a private club, someone was discussing his 4-second stun, suggesting that it was solely the effect of a powerful artifact. Another man wondered if he was going to take revenge on someone, or was simply jealous of the luck that had smiled on him in the fight. The third offered cooperation, claiming that since he was the captain's favorite, this could be used to his advantage. However, this man was soon captured. His ear was cut off, and they demanded an explanation as to who he took them for. They decided that he had decided to command and use others as his personal mercenaries, which was strictly prohibited and unacceptable. He was brutally beaten, making it clear that those who try to pretend to be someone important and significant are not tolerated here. Shin Sang-hun's home was in Songpa Yamsil district, where he once again felt truly alive and free. He smiled again, realizing that he had become a player not for the money, but to gain real power and skill. The work of a porter brought only a pittance, while the players received several times more for their exploits and achievements. It was especially nice when bonuses were added on top, especially for successfully completing a dungeon and defeating strong bosses. The Berserker Ring, although bronze level, provided good additional bonuses that could be used wisely in battle. Artifacts that required energy allowed one to ignore penalties, even in the complete absence of mana, which he knew for sure and verified through experience. He only discovered such subtleties after reaching 50 levels, after which he began to use them with maximum efficiency. These energy-consuming artifacts allowed one to maintain active effects and skills even when one's mana was completely depleted. During combat, he initiated synchronization with the ring, fully understanding the benefit of the combination of multiple skills and artifacts working simultaneously. In another closed club, they were again discussing his 4-second stun, envying his luck, and suggesting the presence of a powerful hidden artifact. Some wanted to be punished. Some harbored deep envy, and others were simply waiting for a convenient opportunity to take revenge. One of them proposed a deal that since he was the captain's favorite, he could be used for his own purposes and benefits. Everything changed when the hero was captured. His ear was cut off, and they demanded an explanation of who he thought he was and why he was trying to command. He realized that you can't pretend to be the boss here if you can't take proper responsibility and answer for it. He was immediately made to understand that no one would become his personal servant, even if he was the captain's player and enjoyed his patronage. They taught him a harsh lesson, not wanting to tolerate such an impudent upstart who decided to buy everyone and humiliate them with his behavior. They showed that among players is not only the level and strength that are important, but also the respect that must be earned in action and battle. The main character at this time returned home, rejoicing at his luck and new opportunities, because for him, everything was just beginning. He understood that for the sake of such victories and real strength, it was worth going out again and again to risky battles. Risking his life, now he was no longer going to be weak, choosing his path to become the strongest player that all opponents would fear. The money must be paid immediately. Otherwise, unpredictable developments may begin later, without any guarantees or promises. He should pay exactly what his own ear is worth. To understand where exactly to look for that guy and how to proceed, it was a training ground where fighters often gathered to practice their fighting skills and improve their skill. Shin Sang-hun sat there sighing heavily, as if bearing the weight of the unpredictable and disturbing thoughts that tormented his mind. No one could even imagine that a simple ring could turn into a cold cucumber soup of Oriental cuisine, capable of killing anyone who ate it, causing excruciating pain and anxiety in the stomach. However, despite everything, you can always find positive aspects and hidden advantages in everything, which sometimes open up unexpectedly. At that very moment, Shin Sang-hun threw his weapon into the air, deftly spinning it between his fingers and demonstrating his skill. After that, he quickly grabbed the sword, not letting it fall to the ground, showing amazing dexterity and speed of reaction. He immediately noticed that the sword had become much lighter, as if it had been freed from unnecessary weight, and had become more convenient for combat. It was a special effect that was always active without recharging, and he decided to use the two-handed sword for now, so as not to accidentally let go of it. Overall, the situation was quite good and gave the guy a small, but very pleasant feeling of satisfaction and confidence. He realized that he would have to choose a constellation for himself, since each player could only have one, and he had to think carefully about his choice. If he had the opportunity to choose, he would prefer the constellation that best suits his luck and current statistics. Now, however, he clearly lacked the necessary characteristics to attract her attention and earn her true interest. So for now, all he could do was continue to train hard and improve to become better every day. Shin Sang-hun has arrived in a completely unknown and mysterious place, preparing for new challenges and exciting adventures ahead. The guy thought that his mind was developed and strong enough to understand the most complex and confusing situations that he might encounter along the way. He believed that 3 days of hard training and long rides had paid off, mastering new skills, including a basic level of passive mastery of the Uber Sword. Before him lay Dungeon 101, a solo mountain, a unique and exclusive place specially created for individual testing. Plus, he could save himself months of waiting to get inside a single-player dungeon, and he was genuinely happy to finally get to that point. At that moment, Shin Sang-yun noticed something unusual that immediately caught his attention and made him wary. He saw another car drive up, which definitely hadn't been there before and looked suspicious. Shin Sang-yun couldn't understand who exactly was following him and what their intentions were, because he didn't know the plans of these strangers. However, despite everything, he thought that they could deal with this dungeon together if they joined forces. It was at that very moment that they entered the dungeon, fully prepared for the difficult trials that lay ahead. These turn out to be the same guys that the guy from the captain's team asked to help with the task. He was surprised because he thought that this dungeon was intended exclusively for one player and no one else. At that moment, they noticed that Shin Sang-hun was sitting right in front of them, preparing for the unexpected meeting and the upcoming conversation. He stated that he could not believe that a mistake had been made, since this dungeon was his area of responsibility and territory. They started asking him a lot of questions, doubting his sanity and adequacy in such a situation. Shin Sang-hun realized that this team was unusual and unconventional, so he decided not to report them to his superiors, but simply suggested that they leave. They had neither a healer nor a mage, and they did not give up the important stability. So they formed a squad of traders and an archer. Their team resembled a pack of hungry hyenas that hunt people without the slightest mercy or pity. One of them started saying that the guy was too self-confident, and if he died here, he simply wouldn't have a chance to recover. They had previously been completely destroyed due to the constant control of the Players Association, and had not met with real opponents for a long time. In such groups, dealing with archers turns out to be especially difficult due to their high maneuverability and speed of movement. Shin Sang-hun noted that this is why he had been expecting them in advance and was fully prepared for the upcoming meeting. When the time comes to dispose of their bodies, this place will be the most suitable and convenient for this task. One of the men became enraged and began to insult him, calling him the most rude and indecent word, a piece of shit. Another stated that they do not intend to take the easy way out and are ready for a serious and fierce fight to the end. The man replied that if this was the easy way, then he was ready to rip out the enemy's tongue and feed it to him, showing his determination. Shin Sang-yeon said that he is a good dog and must obey his master. So, as not to waste time, so attack all at once without delay. The man replied that this suited him better and that he was ready to immediately enter the fight. He closed his mouth and immediately began to attack, not giving his opponent a second to rest or catch his breath. Shin Sang-yeon thought about how only the strongest survive in the dungeon, and this expression fits here perfectly. The monsters of the dungeon always strive to kill him, and if there are no monsters, then it is the people who wish him dead no less strongly. Someone always wants to kill him, and this has become an integral and unchanging part of his life and destiny. If he turns out to be weak and defenseless, he will inevitably die because in the dungeon there are no rules, either he or his opponent. He had a similar experience in his past life and even at a younger age. This rule worked without exception. So everything that happens here is just an act of self-defense. Shin Sang-hun asked why they suddenly stopped, since they were going to attack and not show weakness for a second. Immediately after this, they all simultaneously rushed into a furious and coordinated attack on him, leaving absolutely no chance for defense or salvation. The guy firmly ordered all the fighters to maintain a safe distance and carefully cover each other while they took up advantageous and well thought-out fighting positions. They could not understand how Shin Sang-yeon was able to kill Sang-ho so easily and effortlessly, which caused them serious doubts and deep bewilderment. Even if he was an idiot in their opinion, he had still reached level 100 since he had recently awakened, just like them, causing them to both respect and fear him. Shin Sang-yeon began to slowly rotate his weapon in his hands and asked with interest where exactly they were going to go next, not hiding his obvious curiosity and interest. One of the opponents arrogantly declared that Shin Sang-yeon was a real damn monster, causing everyone present to feel a mixture of horror and respect for his incredible strength. Shin Sang-hyun did not respond to this insult in any way, remaining cool, collected, and fully focused on the upcoming fight and further actions. The guy considered everything that was happening to be absolute madness, because he easily broke the arrow fired in his direction, showing his superiority over the enemy. At that very moment, Shin Sang-hyun also skillfully killed the attacker, demonstrating the sudden, decisive, and undeniable power of his fighting skills. They could not understand how he threw his sword so accurately and precisely, and who was really hiding behind this man, who was hiding his true capabilities. All this meant only one thing. They seriously underestimated their enemy and irrevocably fell into the trap that he had prepared for them. In advance, Shin Sang-yeon took a quick but careful and searching look at the one-eyed boy, trying to read and understand his true intentions and plans for further action. They noticed that he was completely disarmed and vulnerable, the perfect and most opportune moment for a powerful and decisive attack on their part. He said that now was the time to start active actions and attack, but they were still in no hurry to show initiative and combat activity. The protagonist's sword was indeed missing from his hands, which was an unexpected turn of events, and caused additional tension among everyone present. The protagonist ran to his weapon, while the enemies hesitated and did not dare to strike immediately, fearing to fall into a trap. Shin Sang-yoon jumped with incredible speed, trying to reach his sword as quickly as possible, showing his determination and fighting spirit. All the enemies attacked him at the same time and shouted loudly for him to finally die, trying to exert maximum psychological pressure and break his spirit. At that very moment, there was a sudden, powerful and deafening explosion that stunned everyone present and changed the course of the battle. For an instant, one of the attackers could not understand what exactly had happened and where this powerful explosion had suddenly come from, which had disrupted their plans. Shin Sang-yoon said that the explosion was very close, and it could have destroyed them all in an instant if the strike had been a little more precise and powerful. They immediately called him a complete psycho, not believing in his common sense and doubting the adequacy of his actions in such a critical situation. Shin Sang-yoon began to quickly and confidently draw his sword, preparing for the next, even more brutal and dangerous fight, without showing the slightest fear. At that moment, the guy suddenly asked Jun what he was doing, when he suddenly grabbed him by the head and tried to drag him somewhere. Jun began to pull him somewhere, without explaining the reasons for his abrupt, but clearly thought out and necessary actions for their common safety. It was then that he covered himself with his comrade, and Shin Sang-hun noticed this moment and respectfully appreciated the support and loyalty shown. The guy didn't care at all that he could accidentally injure or even kill his own comrade in this cruel and chaotic chaos. Shin Sang-hun thought out loud and asked if they were also involved in selling human organs, which seemed like an extremely disgusting and dangerous business. To him, it didn't matter how he felt about it, because together they trusted each other and intended to collect mana through organ transplantation, which in his opinion was quite logical and justified. It was hard to tell from his appearance, but he had seen a lot in his life, and now it no longer had much meaning to him or influence on his decisions. If he really knows the whole truth, then now is the time to act decisively and not waste a minute of precious time, because it is worth its weight in gold. Shin Sang-hun said he just wanted to know without any hidden meaning, malicious intent, or selfish intentions, just for the sake of clarity. The boy used a powerful and precise demon strike, demonstrating all the power and mastery of his unique and dangerous skill in battle. He admitted that he was afraid of dying, of boredom in this protracted and monotonous battle, and this is what made him try much harder than usual. He couldn't tell if his opponent was actually deaf to his attacks, as it seemed impossible in such a tense situation and fight. He found it strange that all these scratches were just superficial injuries, and he couldn't believe that this was really a special and powerful skill that could cause harm. Shin Sang-hun said with confidence that everything was already over, and the outcome of this difficult and bloody battle was finally and irrevocably decided. Jun-tae was stunned and did not understand whether he would really die so easily, because all his life he had been the one who kills and not the one who is killed. It had always been this way throughout his long life, and in his opinion, it would never change no matter what the circumstances. The guy told Hunta that he sincerely believed in him and supported him in the most difficult and critical moments, when everything seemed lost. After some time, he asked again why everything was happening this way and what steps they should take next. In this difficult situation, he promised to do anything and asked not to kill him, hoping for mercy and compassion from his enemies and fate. Shin Sang-hun asked if he had ever been in a similar, difficult and dangerous situation, understanding and empathizing with all the feelings and fears of the guy. Now Jun-tae was genuinely scared, finding himself cornered into a hopeless situation with no way out or escape. Shin Sang-hyun understood that he shouldn't get used to this situation because he had recently become younger, and it seemed had lost his last chance to sign a lucrative contract with a powerful constellation. However, he knew that all this was just self-defense, and in such extreme and cruel conditions, everything else lost all meaning and significance. Then he noticed a bright and dazzling glow on their weapons, which immediately attracted his close attention and deep interest. He obtained 8 powerful and valuable artifacts from this dungeon and began to wonder if this meant that all of this now belonged entirely to him. Exclusively, Shin Sang-hun began to dress quickly, carefully preparing for the next. important and responsible stage of his long and difficult journey. He would have liked to avoid all these unpleasant and dangerous situations, but looking at the final results, he realized that it was all worth it and was sincerely glad that he did not suffer from the effects of dangerous artifacts. Judging by the statistics and indicators, he was about as strong and resilient as experienced level 50 players. And after rejuvenation, his physical and combat growth began to grow exponentially, increasing sharply every day. In addition, he had additional and hidden advantages that greatly enhanced his fighting abilities and made him more resistant to various attacks. The main character had a special recovery ring, thanks to which he could quickly and effectively recover after the most grueling and difficult battles, without wasting time on long rest. The guy who had first suddenly attacked him had a status anomaly removal artifact on it, which was an unpleasant and unexpected surprise for him, forcing him to be more careful. This meant that if his blow had only a stunning effect, he would have been in complete and mortal danger. So now the protagonist began to act much more carefully and prudently. The process of synchronizing energy flows with the restoration ring began, which significantly increased his chances of successfully overcoming all difficulties at trials. Dungeon number 100 on this day is an internal and grueling road, where the tests became more and more difficult, dangerous, and unpredictable. At that very moment, the ORC suddenly noticed something important and significant that could radically change the course of all subsequent events. Shin Sang-hyun stood right behind them, unnoticed and focused, ready to make a decisive and swift dash into action at any moment. The guy sighed heavily, feeling the growing tension in the air and the approaching danger, which made his heartbeat faster. The requirements for obtaining the title of Lucky Day were unusual. An eccentric, one had to kill 500 enemies with one's eyes closed, which seemed almost impossible. The monsters looked at him with surprise and distrust, not expecting such dexterity, confidence, and impeccable control in his actions. One of the monsters could not understand what was going on in this confusing and strange situation, causing everyone present to feel confused and bewildered. Shin Sang-hun knew exactly when they would attack and was fully prepared for their swift and coordinated attacks. At that moment, he realized that this would be an easy and quick prey for him, without any particular difficulties or complications. The protagonist clearly felt their presence around him, as if it were a flow of air and energy, vibrations that surrounded him from all sides. He needed to concentrate and listen carefully to all the little things, sounds and movements happening around him. He gathered all his strength and inner energy to fully concentrate on the upcoming battle and control over the situation. Shin Sang-hyun tried his best to enter a state of complete control over himself, his own body, and the surrounding environment. At that moment, he felt movement, a harbinger of the beginning of a swift and decisive attack. The guy was confident in his abilities, had a strong intention, and knew that he would definitely be able to succeed. At that moment, the monster, without any warning, began to advance on it, opening the fight swiftly and aggressively. Shin Sang-hyun immediately entered the fray, demonstrating confident skill and determination in battle. After some time, all the enemies completely disappeared, and he was left alone on the battlefield, feeling the satisfaction of victory. The guy said that it was a good and inspiring start, which inspires further success and achievements. At that moment, someone suddenly shot at him or cast an unknown spell, causing him to instantly tense up and concentrate. Shin Sang-hyun sensed the presence of something nearby, something mysterious and dangerous, something that could affect the outcome of the battle at any moment. So far, he had handled the situation quite well, without giving up or showing any signs of fatigue or fear, of course. He turned out to be a skilled and dangerous archer, whose arrow could cause serious damage if he did not react in time. The monster watched what was happening in surprise, not understanding what exactly was happening now and what it would lead to. Shin Sang-hyun recently found himself in an extremely difficult situation, from which he managed to emerge victorious with honor and skill. Through this experience, he was able to recall past lessons that helped him sense the situation more accurately and react more quickly to danger, one way or another. He was ready to accept any attacks and fight new opponents, without hesitation, without retreating. To his surprise, the monsters immediately took him for a serious threat and began an offensive, trying to break his resistance. They all rushed at him at once with fury and determination, trying to overcome and destroy him. Shin Sang-hyun continued to fight them, not giving his enemies the slightest chance of victory. A confident smile appeared on his face, which clearly spoke of his strong determination and unshakable faith in success. At that moment, he furiously and skillfully cut down everyone who stood in his way, sparing no one and not stopping. The remaining monster screamed in despair, horror and fear of imminent death, realizing that he had no chance. Shin Sang-yun, of course, killed him mercilessly, ending the fight without any trace or doubt in his victory. After this, the hero's level increased, and he felt a surge of strength and confidence in his own abilities. He received the title of Lucky Day, although he did not think he had done anything truly special or outstanding. Slowly but surely, he received all the necessary titles and achievements, gradually approaching his cherished goal. At that very moment, the monster looked at the guy with surprise, despair, and hopelessness, realizing that his fate was sealed. He saw all his comrades killed one after another, and understood that his fate was inevitable death. The protagonist thought, why not use this moment to earn additional characteristics, because new, stronger enemies were already following him. After a while, he simply laughed, realizing the absurdity and comedy of the situation. His luck stats increased by 30 points. Thanks to this title, which was significantly better than most platinum players, it could be worth 500 million, or even $1 billion on the gaming item market. Given its rarity and power, the protagonist received a notification that his surroundings began to gradually blur, and now he will be able to afford to buy his own house. In this life, opening up new opportunities, Shin Sang-hyun realized that changes were beginning to happen, and it felt more and more intense every day. The three constellations offered a contract. The cleaner of the fallen world asked if he was interested in the suffering of other people. The pilgrim of the great cosmos showed interest in the guy's mystery and asked for permission to negotiate. The goddess of fortune smiled and extended her hand to him, inviting him to make a pact and support his path. The goddess of fortune slowly approached, radiating confidence and intent to establish contact with the protagonist. The main character felt daring and insecure, as this had never happened in his past life. The goddess of fortune showed obvious interest in him, carefully studying his abilities and character. She was intrigued by the hero's luck, as she had never seen such effects from fellers before. He felt relieved that all three constellations wanted to sign a contract with him and develop a relationship. The Fallen Dimension's cleaner blessed him for his hidden cruelty, valuing his combat achievements highly. The pilgrim of the great cosmos doubted the hero's true intentions, but saw in him the potential of a saint. He tried to guess why the hero appeared now, perhaps due to the influence of the goddess of luck. The goddess of fortune was popular even among other constellations, which increased her authority and influence. At that moment, the goddess of fortune looked closely at the hero, as if assessing his inner strength. She stated that she has no special requirements and allows contact with her regardless of choice. The protagonist remembered the incredible merits of the archer, who was able to hit a target even in empty space. The blessing of peace allowed him not to worry about running out of arrows, and gave him confidence in battles. Hashimoto Yuki, a disciple of miracles, received the highest praise among archers for his destructive power. The contract with the goddess of fortune was one of those that made the impossible possible. For the protagonist, three constellations appear before him, and he began to carefully consider his future choice and destiny. The constellations advised not to be afraid of worries, and to make decisions independently, despite possible mistakes. The goddess of fortune was undoubtedly a powerful constellation that influenced the hero's fate as a player in his past life. After 10 years, only one constellation contacted him and helped him in his development. The late dawn became a ray of salvation for him, giving hope in a bright future. Despite hopes, nothing changed until he was 55 and left without support. He left without realizing how important the constellation was and why he had not used its power earlier. Eventually, he was able to return to the past thanks to the constellation, for which he remained grateful and respectful. This meant that living life for the third time would be more difficult, and one had to be especially careful. He thought about the holy powers that could influence the outcome of his fate and his future path then. He thought about the destruction that could destroy everything he had built in his life and career. He also thought about luck, which could become a decisive factor in his fate and success. The main character realized that he had to make a difficult choice on which the future depended. After much deliberation, he finally accepted the contract, weighing all the benefits and risks. As expected, he signed a contract with the goddess of fortune that is valid for 30 years. after his death, a being from another dimension watched the player, while 15 friendly constellations congratulated him. 3 hostile constellations promised to stop his progress, which caused anxiety and suspicion. The protagonist resolutely ignored the threats and focused on his goal and development. He wished good luck to his opponents, demonstrating confidence and calm in any situation. The goddess extended her hand to him as a sign of support and consent. To conclude an important contract, she praised his wise decision, confirming that the choice was made correctly and at the right time. He decided to find out the effects of the contract and told about his desires, expecting improvements and bonuses. All attack attempts now resulted in a critical hit, and unique artifacts revealed hidden capabilities. Using points to level up doubled the stats, and luck increased all bonuses at once. The goddess of fortune asked what he intended to do with the proposals of other constellations, and plans Shin Sang-hun replied that he was only focused on the goddess of fortune and did not prevent other constellations from leaving. The pilgrim of the great cosmos promised to wait for the next meet and continue to observe its development. The fallen dimension's cleaner warned that he would do everything to remove his head, if necessary. The goddess of fortune praised his fortitude and determination, supporting him in difficult circumstances. The protagonist realized that, with such effects from the goddess of luck, he cannot be afraid of the upcoming trials. The dungeon has been reduced to 1 room, with a final boss ready for the final fight. The main character fought the boss, concentrating on repelling all of his strong and furious attacks. The goddess of fortune watched closely every move and decisive moment of his battle. The protagonist asked himself if he was strong enough to win this final battle. At that moment, the hero was completely focused on the battle, without being distracted by anything extraneous. The final boss was a goblin lord, consumed by unbridled greed and rage. He sharply attacked the main character. At that very important and critical moment, the monster was overcome with rage and persistently pursued the protagonist without stop. The Goblin Lord has struck the hero with a powerful status ailment that causes depression and weakness. The protagonist encountered the suppression effect for the first time, which was less powerful than stunning, but still dangerous. This illness significantly reduced the hero's motivation to continue fighting and resisting the enemy. He immediately decided to use the Ring of Restoration to get rid of depression and fatigue. At that very moment, the monster attacked again, trying to interrupt the hero's healing process. The hero could not understand whether he had already killed the enemy or whether the battle continued. For a long time, the skill had its limitations and could not fully restore all of the hero's abilities. In battle recovery was especially useful before battles with less powerful and weaker monsters. Shin Sang-yun used the recovery skill, preparing for further battles and trials. Thanks to the restoration, the depression weakened and stopped, preventing the hero from fighting effectively. At this point, Shin Sang-hun mockingly asked if the monster thought this would work against him. The skill Demon Strike was used, strengthening attacks, and delivered precisely at this critical moment. The Goblin Lord was stunned for only 2 seconds, which seemed like too little to the hero. The protagonist was surprised that the stunning effect lasted only a couple of seconds and expected more. He realized that he would need a few more extra seconds of time to win. The first delay effect has been activated, extending the stun by exactly 2 seconds. The main character continued to vigorously attack the enemy, not allowing him to come to his senses. The chance of extending the stun reached 90%, which significantly increased the chances of winning. The protagonist was surprised that the effect worked again, prolonging the stun for a second time. After some time, he successfully finished the fight, leaving his opponent no chance. The monster fell defeated and without strength after a furious and prolonged battle. The hero was congratulated for successfully clearing the dark Goblin Swamp Dungeon. His level increased, and he also received a new D rank title. Don't Touch Me, the main character, was glad that the long-awaited battle had finally come to an end after a tense fight with the bandits. He felt like he had gotten his much-needed dose of dungeon cleansing. The Goddess of Fortune said that behind such luck, there is something more than just a bad streak in life. She claimed that luck was a skill he possessed and could change his position easily. The goddess assumed that all the hero's successes were due to her support and blessing. The protagonist noticed that his luck stats had exceeded 100, causing the effects to be corrected and strengthened. The evasion stat, for example, affects the speed and quality of his evasion from enemy attacks. Luck stats increase the frequency of rare and valuable artifacts dropping in battle. Thanks to the goddess of luck, He always received a guaranteed artifact after defeating enemies. Luck directly influenced the frequency of artifact drops, providing an advantage in the game. The process of synchronizing energy with the Kyuden's shield began, which turned out to be more useful than the help from the late dawn. Not far from Jamsil, there's a quest zone where the hero had to complete important tasks. One girl resolutely refused to accept the conditions or proposals, expressing her opinion. The guy explained that he understood their position, but he had his own compelling reasons for his choice. He had already seen too many deaths this week, and he didn't want things to go wrong. 2 hours ago, he was driving along the Hanam Expressway, lost in thoughts and plans. He was worried about the food, the goblin shield, the classic bowl of kimchi and rice he had recently eaten. At that moment, something strange happened, causing confusion and anxiety in the hero. The main character did not understand the meaning of the incoming signals and tried to interpret them. He suggested that changing the car was not the most important task now. It was more important to get to the destination in time. The lower the hero's level, the higher the likelihood of encountering various crimes and dangers. He doesn't want to live in constant anxiety. So moving to a more secure city would be the best solution. You should also consider artifacts. Consider purchasing and absorbing supported items for strengthening. At that moment, the main character thought about this whole situation and the upcoming tasks the guy understood perfectly well. That he urgently needed money for further goals and development. He knew that there was only one place where he could get a lot of resources, thanks to the system and the era of players. This system included special tasks that appeared along with it, requiring effort and ingenuity. The organization that controlled these tasks was the Players Association, and he was confident that he could handle it. Here is the task zone, where the main character had to prove himself and his abilities. The girl in the present tense. Strongly recommended. Visiting dungeons that corresponded to the hero's level. The protagonist swore that he was causing trouble, but he was able to control the situation despite being level 17. The girl said that she had already heard similar excuses, but insisted on visiting the appropriate areas. He understood that in the current conditions, it was necessary to act decisively and go ahead without hesitation. At that moment, the girl asked for time off to figure out what was going on and why there was so much noise. It turned out to be Kim Miso from the Eden Guild, a level 100 player with an A+ rank. Famous and strong Shin Sang-hyun immediately recognized her, the first player with an A+ rank, and the title of Rising Star among archers. She was the daughter of Kim Yun-chul, the chairman of a sacred biotechnology company. She is also known by the alias Shadow Assassin, which commands fear and respect after her. Cho Jinho was considered the best swordsman in Korea, which emphasized her status and strength. Her family owned the largest share in the guild, making her one of the most influential players. She was called the most criminal player in history, and she immediately asked if they were meeting for the first time. She watched him for a while and wondered why he needed such a high-level task. Others were surprised that she spoke to him and thought he was just a brazen. Level 17 Psycho, the girl, claimed that the task was very difficult, and the guy confidently replied that he was ready for the challenge. The protagonist said that the higher the risk, the higher the reward, and he intends to complete the task honestly. In her past life, she refused him a guild, although she herself did not want to take him into the team. It wasn't out of resentment. He knew that solo missions were prohibited by the rules of the Players Association. He had long forgotten that this rule only changes every 4 years, and that breaking it is dangerous. Then he laughed, thinking that maybe he would just see how it went, and decided to move on at this moment. The girl wanted to offer something, ready to help and discuss the terms of cooperation. She asked if he wanted to go through the mission with her, offering support and teamwork. No one could understand her intentions, but she was clearly jealous and wanted to take part in the test. The protagonist did not understand what she had in mind and cautiously asked about the specific conditions. She replied that it was not just a favor and warned about the risks, because life had taught her not to trust people. It is impressive that there are no conditions. It is more of a promise than a concrete agreement. If his skills prove inferior to those he claims, he will pay the price of failure and defeat. However, if her confidence matches her abilities, she will offer sincere apologies and support. The main character realized that the girl was putting him to the test, testing his determination and skills. Her influence went far beyond that of a simple player. The clothing brand rose to the skies thanks to her. With just one word from her, dozens of articles were published, and the careers of many self-confident players quickly ended. The protagonist asked when they were leaving, knowing that there would be fun and danger ahead. The girl told the driver that she would wait here. but she herself could not return to her duties anytime soon. All the guild members had busy schedules, and he would have to find a partner for the task. Luckily, the girl had a reason to go with Shin Sang-hun. Despite the difficulties, the minimum requirements for participants in the task were strict, but she managed to find a confident player. Nobody knew what this player was really capable of, which made the situation even more interesting. She asked what specific task he wanted to complete so that they could coordinate plans and strategies. The girl immediately offered her idea and plan for successfully completing this difficult task. They had to destroy all the wolf-like monsters, rushing towards the defense tower in order to save the core. If the tower's core is destroyed, the mission will fail and the reward will be 500 million in-game coins. He wanted to complete the mission alone, without the support of other players. Despite the risk, the boy asked the girl if she would be afraid if someone died in battle. Instead of him, the girl asked again and suddenly fell silent, as if she was overcome with fear or doubt. If she's having a hard time, they can wait for other range damage dealers or tanks. Perhaps she had some other reason for caution and uncertainty. In this matter, the girl said with a smile that she was not afraid and fully accepted the task without hesitation. At that moment, they began to teleport, preparing for the upcoming battle and trials. The girl thought that nothing bad would happen with Kim Miso around, although everything could change. The rest doubted that a level 17 hero would be able to cope with level 100 monsters. She is the youngest player in the top tier, and her reputation made him doubt his chances. He knew about the new ranking system in the Players Association, where level was not the only indicator of strength. Now, two characteristics are taken into account: the number of dungeons completed and the player's combat sense. The first is the number of dungeons cleared. The second is a general assessment of the player's combat sense and skills. The girl got an A+ rank thanks to her persistence, and he understood why it wasn't just an A. But higher, it is obvious that there is someone stronger than her, who surpasses her in strength and skill. Now it didn't matter, because the main thing was to complete the task together, and successfully he decided to go with the girl, despite all the doubts and fears of those around him. Of course, many envied him for receiving the support of such a strong player. The mission took place at night, a time when wolves became especially active and dangerous. The girl took up a position on the roof of the building to better control the situation and provide cover. Her words had weight if serious danger arose. She would definitely come to the rescue. Shin Sang-yin looked at him carefully during this tense moment, assessing the situation, but the girl hoped that the task would be easy and would bring him back down to earth. Half an hour before this, she asked him, and he confirmed that she heard everything correctly. Help cost 5%, she heard right. 5% of the reward for help was a good offer and a fair deal. She asked if her conditions bothered him, since he couldn't handle 300 monsters alone, even though she is level 100. A solo playthrough would be an extremely difficult challenge for her. At that moment, she noticed something important, and Shin Sang-hun told her to just watch him closely. Then for each monster missed, his share of the reward was reduced by 1%, which was a serious risk. If he missed 95 monsters, he would not receive any reward at all. He understood this perfectly well. At that very moment, the first monster appeared on the path, threatening both of them. All the monsters looked straight at the protagonist, preparing to attack him without delay. Shin Sang-hyun agreed to her conditions, confident that they would cope and not allow any gaps. The monsters stared at him, trying to assess the enemy's strength and plan of attack. Shin Sang-hyun firmly declared that he would not let anyone go and would defeat all enemies without exception. At this moment, the monsters began to rapidly transform, preparing for a dangerous battle. The girl watched what was happening, carefully assessing the situation and choosing a strategy. Shin Sang-hyun easily dealt with the advancing enemies, striking them with his strength and technique. It all happened in a split second, as if time slowed down in that tense moment. Shin Sang-yin said that the enemy was not small, but she didn't know that yet. She realized that his confidence was not in vain. The blow was flawless and precise. His stance made perfect use of the advantages of a two-handed sword. Attack and defense as one. Moreover, he minimized unnecessary movements, killing several enemies at once with one blow. But even with such confidence, the situation remained tense and dangerous. There were too many monsters, and level 17 would hardly be able to cope with such an onslaught. Shin Sang-yin wondered if he could defeat all the enemies on his own. Suddenly something was wrong. He stopped abruptly, trying to understand the reason. Naturally, he used the Demon Strike skill to strengthen his attack. It was the silencing effect that suddenly worked. The girl was very surprised to see such an unexpected turn of events. Shin Sang-yun continued to fight the monsters, using all his skills and abilities without stop. She realized that the situation was dangerous, but did not fall despite the prolonged suppression. The stun lasted for 4 seconds, longer than the famous Jinho, surprising everyone around. This meant that he could calmly inflict status effects and quickly destroy all enemies. The girl could not understand who he was and where he got such incredible abilities. At this moment, Shin Sang-jayun noticed something unusual that caught his attention. Away from the battle, he looked straight at the wolf, who was quickly approaching, preparing for another attack. Suddenly, a powerful explosion occurred, attracting the attention of everyone present and changing the situation. Shin Sang-yeon said that a worthy opponent had finally appeared. It was a black wolf. The wolf was overcome with rage and directed all his anger at the main character. At that moment, they had met before, but this battle was especially intense and important for both of them. The wolf was inflicting a stunning effect, and the boy noticed that they had similar combat skills. The girl watching realized that the wolf also had a powerful stun, similar to his thanks to her artifact. The stun effect was increased, which played a key role in the battle. She was so engrossed in watching the fight that she forgot about her own safety. She wanted to follow the guy's reaction, but the tension of the situation made her shut up. She admitted that she had the ability to cause stun, but it was rare to use it so early. The stun effect was deactivated due to Shin Sun-hyun's rapid recovery in battle. The girl couldn't understand how he managed to hold his stance with a two-handed sword for so long without falling. He was skilled at removing negative effects, even at level 17, which was an unusual skill. Shin Sang-yun said that his tactics are an unexpected surprise. For any opponent, the wolf expected the victim to remain immobile, but the boy moved freely and attacked. The wolf's fleeting moment of panic was decisive and gave the protagonist a chance to win. At that moment, Shin Sang-yun thrust his sword into the wolf, which decided the outcome of the entire battle. The wolf fell dead, struck by the protagonist's swift and precise attack. The stunned state without the stun skill was powerless against his strength and will. He hoped to slip past the wolf, but was. If he adds 500 million in his wrist, then they can come to an agreement. Otherwise, the man said, let him go if he is scared and not ready to fight. The comrades started shouting something loudly, trying to attract attention to what was happening. The man asked why he didn't notice what was happening and was busy with his own thoughts. Live chat is asking for 500 million to bet on the fight. To make it spectacular, Shin Sang-hun asked if he agreed, or if he was already scared and ready to give up now. The man realized that if he agreed, the video would be given an age restriction, and his income would decrease. He decided to take the chance to relieve stress, improve his strength in battle anyway. Players, City C, Plaza Building. Spectators watched the battle with interest. Nobody really understood what was happening and how it would all end. This time the training mode was activated to ensure that the fight was as fair and safe as possible. Players have been given a barrier effect, and there is 500 million at stake. The man warned that there would be no mercy, and the fight would go on until the last blow. The training mode is on. Everyone is ready for a serious and intense fight. The man asked the boy if he had heard that the fight had already begun, and that no one was joking. At this moment, young Chul received orders from the leadership to take action immediately. Shin Sang-yun suddenly appeared in the air and launched a swift attack from above. The guy said that he was not joking and would not ask for mercy under any circumstances. Everything happened live, and hundreds of viewers watched the fights online. Kim Miso turned on the TV and saw a fight taking place on the screen. She was confused and did not understand what exactly was happening at that moment. Despite her confusion, she continued to watch the fight with great attention. She recognized the fighter as Choi Young-chul from the Utopia Guild, a high-ranking player. Her sister asked her why she was so gloomy and thoughtful. At that moment, it was Shin Terry, level 700, who immediately recognized the guy in the situation. She asked her sister if it was really worth recruiting this newcomer. The sister replied that she did not understand why the guy was there and what he was doing. She noticed the fighter's sharp and strong movements during the fight. The guy said that Shin Sang-hun is a dangerous and cruel opponent. At that moment, Shin Sang-hun attacked the enemy with full determination and fury. He stated that this brat definitely deserved to be defeated and punished. He called his opponent a bandit and a worthless fighter. Shin Sang-hyun gripped his weapon tightly, preparing for a fierce defense. He began to actively defend himself, parrying all blows and counterattacking. His determination greatly surprised and confused his opponent in battle at this moment. Shin Sang-hyun, fully concentrated and prepared for a powerful attack on the enemy. Soon there was an explosion, shocking everyone and causing them to freeze. For a moment the guy didn't understand what was happening to this vile and impudent enemy. Now Shin Sang-hyun said, with relief, that everything was finally going according to his plan. Since he returned to the past, his body no longer fails him and his strength is restored quickly. The deal went through quickly thanks to her efforts. Great job today, everyone noted. The girl modestly replied that they had worked hard together, but the guy did not immediately understand her words. The captain laughed and suggested, celebrating the good deal by inviting everyone to join in the fun. Shin Sang-hyun apologized and said that he would not be able to join the captain's company. The captain got angry and asked Yuli if it was because he had paid him too much. Shin Sang-hyun explained that he already had plans for the evening and apologized for declining. The captain told the girl that it looked like they would be left alone, but he remembered her important meeting today. Shin Sang-hyun apologized, but said that the artifacts were now tastier than any strong drink. The girl suddenly ran away, and the captain immediately ran after her. Shin Sang-hyun sat down on the bench, feeling tired and tense inside. He sighed heavily, thinking over the events that had happened and his future plans. Measurements showed that the basic absorption rate of bronze was 10%, and the final rate reached 90%. Shin Sang-hyun was surprised that the absorption rate of the artifacts was as much as 90%. The goddess of fortune believes that all such joys come from her, but he usually receives only 10%. He certainly had something to ask her. She is known as a social constellation with powerful influence. Perhaps she had heard of the constellation of the late dawn. Of the model student, the goddess of fortune claims that in recent days, all attention has been directed at the player, scolding him for another interest. Shin Sang-hyun simply said that this constellation actually means a lot to him. This constellation really meant a lot to him and was very important. Well, if you think about it, the goddess of luck has every right to be a little offended. The goddess of fortune turned to him again, showing nobility and understanding. Being very noble, she decided to help and look for this constellation for the player. Well, in that case, he can finally get down to this important business. The process of synchronizing energy with 5 artifacts has begun. The real power of men. The process of synchronizing energy with 5 artifacts has been launched, the top best of the best. Shin Sang-hyun was very surprised by everything that was happening around him. In his progress, he didn't care how battered the artifacts were. He loved his power artifacts with a maximum absorption rate of 90%. How strong he will become. The true dual title activated, and he said it was going to get hot. The man looked scared at that very moment, seeing what was happening. Shin Sang-hyun looked at him attentively, not hiding his contempt. He said that this guy is a bastard and does not deserve respect. Kim Miso yelled at the boy to be careful, and her sister told him not to be afraid. She knew he could dodge and survive this fight. Shin Sang-hyun finally asked him if he had forgotten his agreement and promise. He began to slowly approach his opponent. Preparing for the final, Shin Sang-hyun said that for 500 million, he would take his hand without regret. At that moment, something unexpected happened, and he was trapped. Shin Sang-hyun couldn't understand what exactly was starting to happen around him. The man suddenly began to smile, as if he was preparing an unexpected move. He declared victory and raised his middle finger in disdain. All conditions were met, and the freeze skill was activated instantly. The protagonist watched the unfolding scene with interest, so he realized that he could use more than just fire magic, and it would work. The girl told her sister not to be surprised and to listen carefully to everything that was happening. Sang-hyun is even able to neutralize the effect of statistics, and now she will begin to understand why she is so eager to recruit him. She should carefully observe what is happening, relying solely on her own vision and intuition. However, at that very moment, nothing happened, and Shin Sang-hyun simply froze in place from the cold. She didn't expect such behavior from him at all, which caused her internal surprise. The man could not understand where the guy had disappeared to and what was really going on here. The skill has been activated, and until he turns off the statistic effect, there is simply no way out of the situation. Perhaps he is not as much of a newbie as he tried to show, with his appearance and behavior. At that moment, the main character fell upon the man with all his might, attacking him from above with his entire body. He asked a question, wondering how exactly all this was possible and happening. Perhaps his training regimen is saving him, or some other defense mechanism is at work. At that moment, His comrade began to seriously worry about his condition and future fate. If you think about it right now, a lot of things become much clearer and create completely different feelings. He really had a different aura about him that no one had noticed before. No one could figure out what technique was used or where it came from. It all felt very much like the sudden awakening of some previously hidden combat skill. Such awakening can be related to transcendence or psychedelics, and these black pupils confirm psychedelics as far as she knows. Using such skills requires a lot of strength. He is going to win without taking a single hit from young Chul. The girl chuckled and said that he wouldn't succeed because he had never used this technique with her. This skill requires a lot of luck to activate, so maybe there was just no reason to use it back then. The girl clarified that either it was something else, or he had been deliberately hiding it from her all this time. After her words, the sister simply fell silent, not finding the strength to continue the conversation, or he managed to find a way to master this technique. In an extremely short period of time, the appraiser noted that in this situation, everything is developing extremely unfavorably and alarmingly. The artifact that the main character bought today should have been checked in advance for hidden potential and power. The probability of having a hidden skill was negligible, but if it were to activate, it would change everything. It felt like he had been kissed by the goddess of fortune herself, giving him an incredible chance. The protagonist asked what would happen to his wrist now, and whether it was worth taking into account. It might be worth turning off training mode and trying this challenge again. He didn't underestimate him just because of his appearance. He just didn't expect such power from a stranger. Now he will begin to take him seriously, realizing the real threat he poses. At first it was necessary to keep a distance, but now there was no point in that. It was different from John Ho's technique. He knew the opponent was strong, but he didn't expect his level to be so far beyond his limits. Perhaps this bastard was hiding his true strength all this time and pretending to be weaker. Maybe he was simply delirious, not fully understanding what was happening or his own actions. The main character firmly stated that he would not stop there and would complete what he started. He hit his head on the ground and said that it was time to fulfill the promise. Don't be afraid, the training regimen won't let you die, even if the fight takes a tough turn. The man began to beg to stop, admitting defeat and begging for mercy. He promised to transfer 500 million. And the main character said that the dispute was over. Everything else was personal. Whatever he was, his actions now revealed his true nature, which could no longer be hidden. The main character said that this is exactly why he started all this, without hesitating for a second. 3 days ago, the car dealership fixed it up a bit, but it will still have to be replaced soon. He replied that it was too old a model, and there was simply no point in keeping it any longer. It seems like he's still attached to her, but maybe it's time to say goodbye forever. She was with him everywhere, and he believed that even the car was happy to accompany him. At that moment, it seemed to him that she seemed to answer that she was indeed happy to drive him. Let him take care of himself now, because everything else depends only on him. Shin Sang-hun said that this was for his car, which he always loved so much. The man began to apologize, not knowing how to properly express his remorse. Nobody could figure out what the hell was going on right now. At that moment, one could notice something resembling a rainbow, as if it had appeared right in the middle of space. The audience was also confused, not understanding what exactly they had just seen. The man, already crying, continued to apologize to the guy, asking for forgiveness in a trembling voice. He seemed to be genuinely scared, to the point that the smell became unbearable, as if he had eaten something terrible. Cho Seon-ho realized that this was a complete nightmare, and now, no matter what the channel, they had crossed the line. At that moment, someone approached him whose presence was felt immediately. It was the administrator who said that they had broken the rules and would now bear the consequences for it. It was Moon Baekhyun. They immediately began apologizing, trying to resolve the situation before it was too late. The administrator noted that the situation was unusual. He had heard about the recent awakening and wanted to know more about it. It was at this moment that he was approached to begin the formal part of the conversation. He said that he had come to discuss compensation, elimination of consequences, and asked if he had little time. Shin Sang-hun asked if he could show his ID first before continuing. This behavior seemed like an extreme display of arrogance, clearly inappropriate in this situation. However, it later became clear that this was not arrogance, but the cold confidence of an experienced fighter. He introduced himself and apologized for the delay, saying that they wanted to recruit this guy. He added that the Utopia Guild would pay all compensation and demonstrate goodwill by imposing a bond. Shin Sang-hun replied that they could agree on a symbolic sum of 20 billion, although even 5 was not enough. Of course, the sum of 20 billion or even a billion seemed enormous, and man thought about it. He asked if he could get a discount, or just let the man who had shit himself go. He wondered how they had managed to get to this place so quickly. At this time, many people simultaneously began to offer him to join the guild. The boss told him to leave, and asked her if he would return to training. He should stop dodging the question, and just answer the question directly. He was asked if the rumors about his affair with Kim Miso were true, but Shin Sang-hun believed that personal things should remain personal. He hasn't gotten his life in order yet, and right now, he doesn't need an affair, okay? In that case, he will decisively move on to the next stage. It's time to get down to proper preparation, so as not to repeat previous mistakes. It's hard to believe that she suggested doing this joint research. On that very day, this created complete chaos last week, which was barely contained. But the result was worth it. Who would have thought that? The captain's contract would bring a new harp. In addition, the Demon Strike has been improved. The effect of the title, Overwhelming Impact, now lasts 2.6 seconds, and with a delay longer. And they haven't even completed the entire process. There's still a lot to experience. He decided to look at the fruits of all his recent training, to assess what he had achieved, with his current training and additional weapons. He was ready for exploration and mobility skills. In his last battles, he made unfortunate mistakes, failing to repeat his past experiences. When he fought the wolf, he had to take risks due to his limited arsenal of moves. In a fight with another guy, he fell into all the traps. Lacking mobility, simply put, every opponent outmatched him, and he almost paid for it with his life. We need to look at things soberly. Otherwise, at this rate, there will only be a repetition of past failures. The second collapse will occur in 2040, and this time, it should change the course of the future. He cannot lose everything again. Not in this life, and not in this time. He needs to become stronger. Otherwise, everything will go according to the old scenario. He must rise up like the person he is trying to get closer to at that moment. He received a call that took him by surprise with the news. It was reporter Park Young-min, with whom he had arranged a meeting. He reminded me about today's interview, which was scheduled in advance, and wanted to clarify whether it would be convenient. He suggested meeting at a restaurant, and sent the exact address for convenience. The enemy cleanup is scheduled for 7 in the evening, but the interview will take place at 2. It was now 13:45, and there was very little time left. Shin Sang-hun walked out of the apartment preparing for the day ahead. However, he was not at all friendly. He emanated a clear threat and internal tension. He shouted for everyone to go to the exits immediately, and the psychedelic skill was activated, strengthening the body and accelerating movements. At this time, the reporter sat calmly at the table and patiently waited for the main character to arrive for the meeting. It was at this moment that Shin Sang-hun entered the room, and those present immediately greeted him with respect. The reporter said that he had ordered coffee in advance and invited them to come in, sit at a table, and start a conversation. He was about to say something, but suddenly fell silent, as if he sensed something strange in the atmosphere around him. He noted that Shin Sang-hun looked quite tense, as if he had recently found himself in an extremely dangerous situation. The partner asked if he had come out of a dungeon, but he replied that it was even worse. Shin Sang-hun apologized for being late, and his interlocutor assured him that nothing terrible had happened. He originally requested an interview because of the incident in the mission area, but another important incident occurred. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became how much of a hot topic this was among players. Although level does not determine skill, with his performance, everyone called him an exceptional and rare rookie. Shin Sang-hyun said there was nothing unusual about this, and that it was not only journalists who were showing interest. He said he had received many offers, possibly hinting at the Eden Guild or some other big ones. The reporter clarified that he was not talking about domestic guilds, but about foreign ones, including those at the international level. He assumed that Shin Sang-hyun hadn't heard about the latest news that had been discussed since early morning. 5 foreign guilds have sent inquiries to the Korean Players Association, asking for his details. Foreign guilds even hunt for newcomers. He had never seen such interest in anyone before. There are many eyes watching him now, and his spawn area is a dead-end alley near Chinui Station. He had intended to act alone, but offers from foreign guilds became too tempting. He remembered how he had been treated before, and how much it still hurt him. At that moment, Shin Sang-hun noticed Kim Miso standing nearby in the ring. Waiting to meet, she said that they had some free time, and there was no need to rush anywhere. Shin Sang-hun saw another girl, but he couldn't immediately understand who she was, and why she was nearby. The three of them stood together under the street lamp, illuminated by the soft light of the evening city. Kim Miso said that her sister wanted to meet him and asked him to take her with him. She introduced her sister, Shin Terry, who is also a member of their guild and a good fighter, if he wants to sit down somewhere. There's a suitable cafe with a cozy atmosphere nearby. They greeted each other, shook hands, and formally introduced themselves to each other for the first time. Shin Sang-hun replied that he was glad to meet her and realized that she had hidden her identity. Her name was known. Shin Terry was an elite player known as the Shadow Assassin, a member of the Eden Guild, respected throughout Korea. After returning to the past, he began to encounter great people, and the girl asked for a favor. Shin Sang-hyun replied that if he could help, he would try to fulfill her request without hesitation. She clarified that it was nothing serious and would not take too much time. Her request was one. She wanted to have a short training sparring session with him. Kim Miso was surprised that she had gotten to this point so quickly, considering they had only just met. She explained that her sister always tests first. It was not a spontaneous decision at all. The girl apologized to Shin Sang-hun, explaining that she just has that kind of personality and likes to tease Shin. Sang-hun replied that he didn't mind, and he even found it quite interesting. He asked if they wanted to start right now, while they had some free time. It's not every day that he gets a chance to fight one of the strongest players in all of Korea. It seems Miso really has a good eye for people. She apologized for her harsh words. She suggested limiting it to just 5 sessions and asked to let him know when he was ready. He has almost no chance of winning, but this is a unique opportunity to test his current level. The girl merely chose a weapon, and her aura suddenly changed, becoming threatening and heavy. This time there will be no concessions. Everything will be done in all seriousness and with full dedication. The protagonist said that he was completely ready and immediately activated his psychedelic skill. He immediately began to fight at full strength, and the girl could not keep up with the pace of his movements. The girl announced that they would begin with the first technique and assume the initial fighting stance. At that moment, the space suddenly began to distort, as if under the influence of a strong magical force. The main character was extremely surprised. He did not expect such a level from his opponent. In a regular sparring match, he cursed mentally because at the current level of the body, it was easy to forget how slowly the reaction worked. It was at this moment that the girl suddenly attacked, taking advantage of his momentary loss of concentration. The main character realized that now. He needed to anticipate her actions and react in advance to every movement. The girl became noticeably interested in how he would cope with her subsequent techniques in battle. The protagonist continued to defend himself, parrying her blows and trying not to lose momentum in the fight. The girl praised his movements with a slight smile, and he asked if he should hit harder. She replied that there were only 4 moves left and prepared for the next attack. The main character could only watch her lightning-fast movements and look for vulnerabilities in them. Everything happened as expected. She moved at incredible speed and each time only accelerated. At such moments, everything seems unclear. He cannot rely on the usual visual analysis of the battle, similar to the situation from the past, when visual perception proved useless and the feeling of combat was required. He had to catch her movements with his senses. But this time the difficulty increased tenfold. Kim Miso noticed that the protagonist suddenly closed his eyes, right in the middle of tense fight. She couldn't understand why he did it, because even for him, it looked like sheer madness. It seemed completely reckless and inappropriate, considering how serious his opponent was. It was at this moment that he felt it was time to act, and not waste a second at that very moment. He managed to dodge and successfully deflect her swift attack. The girl said that she was amazed by his concentration and did not expect him to reflect even the second attack. Most masters are unable to achieve this kind of focus in combat. It requires tremendous self-control. She realized that it was not a matter of talent at all, but of experience and intuition developed over the years. He moved like a seasoned veteran with precision and confidence, leaving her no room to move. She noted that there were 3 appointments left, and before continuing, he wanted to ask something. She replied that of course. He could ask whatever he considered necessary at that moment. Instead of performing the techniques one by one, he suggested that she demonstrate them simultaneously. At first, the girl didn't understand what exactly he meant. It seemed like he was joking. He admitted that it sounded cocky, but he couldn't pass up such a unique opportunity. He asked her to show everything she was capable of, at least once during the entire fight. If she doesn't give it her all, he won't be able to grow further. He won't feel her full potential. Kim Miso tried to stop her sister, but she replied that she didn't mind going along with him. At the same time, she noted that she still wouldn't be able to be 100% serious without activating the mod. The skills are too dangerous to use on humans. So she will demonstrate a simple high-speed strike. She agreed and added that she would hit for real, because the loss would come at that very moment. The girl warned that she was starting the attack, giving him one last chance to prepare. The protagonist realized that he would not have time to sense her location, but he had to be ready. He knew he shouldn't just swing his weapon blindly, relying on luck or chance. Before the opponent reveals himself, he must